Caught my wife cheating on me with a guy, so I filed for divorce and started dating someone new, but my ex-wife stalked us, then tried to KLL us with her car. Hey Reddit. I've been a long-time lurker, but today I finally have my own story to share. I've wanted to post this for months now, but honestly, my life has been such a mess that I barely had time to breathe, let alone write about it. Now that everything's finally settled, I can share what happened to me, and maybe it'll help someone else avoid the same situation. Let me introduce myself. I'm a 36-year-old guy who was married to Carolyn, 35F, for what I thought would be forever, but ended up being 6 years of my life I'll never get back. Our marriage wasn't terrible, at least that's what I kept telling myself. We met through Instagram, and I actually thought I'd hit the jackpot. She was gorgeous, funny, and seemed perfect. I was extra careful about watching for red flags because my childhood was pretty messed up. My mom was seriously abusive to my dad. I'm talking screaming matches at 3 a.m., plates flying across the room, and my dad just taking it all because he loved us and didn't want to leave. So you can bet I was on high alert while dating Carolyn. I spent 2 years analyzing every little thing she did, watching how she treated waiters, how she handled stress, how she dealt with money, basically everything you're supposed to check before committing to someone. And honestly, she passed every single test with flying colors. She was patient, kind, generous, everything my mom wasn't. So I thought I'd done my homework, vetted her properly, and found myself a good woman. I even remember telling my best friend that I'd finally broken the cycle of abuse in my family. Man, was I wrong about that one. But I'll get to that part later. We had this beautiful wedding, bought a nice little house in the suburbs, and started what I thought would be our happily ever after. Little did I know I was walking straight into a nightmare, just a different kind than what I'd grown up with. Things started going downhill about 2 years in, and I mean really going downhill. We went from being the couple everyone envied to having these massive blowout fights every month like clockwork. It was always over the stupidest things too, dishes in the sink, me working late, her spending too much time with her friends, or even what TV shows we'd watch. I was busting my ass trying to keep our marriage together because I genuinely believed we could fix things. I mean, this was the woman who used to leave little notes in my lunchbox and surprise me with weekend trips. I couldn't understand how we'd gone from that to her screaming at me because I bought the wrong brand of coffee. I'm the type of guy who believes in fixing things instead of throwing them away, so I suggested couples therapy. Actually, I begged for it. I found this really good therapist who specialized in married couples, made all the appointments, and even paid for it out of my own pocket since Carolyn said it was my idea, my expense. We went to exactly one session, and holy shit, what a disaster that turned out to be. The therapist started pointing out some communication issues, suggesting that maybe Carolyn's way of handling conflict wasn't healthy. She absolutely lost it. Started crying, said the therapist was attacking her, and refused to ever go back. Called the therapist a quack and said I was trying to make her look crazy. Later I found out her dad had died right before the fight started getting bad. I tried to be understanding about that, grief does weird things to people. But she wouldn't talk about it, wouldn't get help, just kept getting angrier and more distant. She never got physical or broke stuff, but man, her screaming matches could wake up the whole neighborhood. Our neighbors actually called the cops once because they thought someone was being murdered. It was just Carolyn yelling about me forgetting to pick up her dry cleaning. Eventually, we fell into this weird routine where we were basically just roommates who occasionally had sex. We'd wake up, go to work, come home, eat dinner while watching TV, and go to bed. Rinse and repeat. The fights got less frequent, but only because we barely talked anymore. I was still stupidly in love with her though, isn't that pathetic? I kept thinking about our early days, convinced myself that if we just tried hard enough, we could get back there. I believed in our marriage vows, that whole for better or worse thing. I guess I forgot that forsaking all others was part of those vows too, but I'll get to that part. Maybe I should have seen the warning signs, but I was raised to believe that marriage is sacred. Unless someone's getting hit or cheated on, you stick it out and work on it. Well, turns out one of those deal breakers was just around the corner, and I had no idea what was coming. Let me set the scene for you all about how everything fell apart. I worked this boring corporate job, nothing fancy, just your typical mid-level position pushing papers and attending endless meetings. The kind where you're important enough to travel but not important enough to fly first class. I had been sent to this business expo in another state, supposed to be there for 4 days schmoozing with clients and pretending to care about PowerPoint presentations. Here's where my life decided to take a massive dump on me. 3 days into the expo, our office back home had some major crisis. Something about servers crashing and losing client data, typical corporate emergency stuff. My boss called everyone back early, and being the dedicated employee I am, or maybe just an idiot, you decide, I immediately booked the first flight home. I had this stupid, romantic idea in my head. You know those movies where the husband surprises his wife and they have this magical reunion? Yeah, I actually thought that would happen. I spent my entire Uber ride from the airport planning this surprise. Stopped at this fancy florist and dropped $80 on her favorite flowers, these expensive purple orchids she always said reminded her of our first date. I even grabbed some wine and those fancy chocolates she likes. I was thinking maybe this could be our fresh start. We'd been so distant lately, just going through the motions, and I thought this spontaneous gesture might remind her of why she fell in love with me in the first place. I got home around 2 p.m., feeling like the world's best husband with my flowers and chocolates. The house looked normal, her car was in the driveway, which made sense since she worked from home on Thursdays. I remember noticing some weird things though, like her favorite playlist was blasting from upstairs, which she only ever played when she was in a really good mood. There were 2 wine glasses in the sink, but I figured she'd had a friend over for lunch or something. God, I was so fucking naive. I walked straight upstairs to our bedroom, excited to surprise her. The music was getting louder, and I could hear some other noises too, but my brain wasn't processing what they meant. You know that moment in horror movies where everyone's screaming at the character not to open the door? I was that character. I turned that doorknob, pushed open the door to my own bedroom, and my entire world imploded. Every single happy memory, every moment of trust, every I love you, all of it turned to ash in that single second. What I saw in that bedroom will be burned into my brain until the day I die. There was my wife, the woman I'd spent 6 years loving, supporting, and building a life with, underneath some random dude in our bed. The same bed where we talked about having kids someday. The same bed where I'd held her when her father died. She wasn't even trying to be quiet about it, just going at it like I didn't even exist, like our marriage meant absolutely nothing. The flowers I'd bought dropped to the floor as I stood there like a complete idiot, watching them scramble like cockroaches when you turn on the lights. The guy, and I'll never forget this, had the nerve to try and just run past me like I was some kind of doorman. He's frantically trying to put on his clothes, dropping stuff everywhere, and I just snapped. Maybe it was seeing him wearing my wife, or maybe it was how he thought he could just walk away from destroying my marriage, but something in me broke. Before I even realized what I was doing, my hand was around his throat. Not squeezing to kill him or anything, but definitely letting him know he wasn't just walking out of there. I actually ended up slapping him. Not punching him like you'd expect, just 2 open-handed slaps across his face like some dramatic housewife in a soap opera. Even now I don't know why I didn't just punch him instead. The guy's face went from scared to angry real quick, like he was actually going to try and fight me in my own house after I caught him with my wife. Can you believe the audacity? The absolute disrespect? I bet he didn't even know Carolyn was married. She probably fed him some bullshit story about being single or separated. He probably thought I was some crazy ex-boyfriend or something. I let him go before things could escalate further. Not because I was scared, but because in that moment, I realized this pathetic excuse of a man wasn't worth catching an assault charge over. He wasn't the one who made vows to me. He wasn't the one who promised to love and cherish me till death do us part. He was just another dick who couldn't keep it in his pants. The real betrayal was still in that bedroom, probably thinking about how to lie her way out of this one. When I turned back to face Carolyn, my whole body was shaking. There she was, the woman I'd given everything to for 6 years, fumbling with her bra like this was just some minor inconvenience in her day. The purple orchids I'd bought were scattered across the floor, probably crushed under that guy's feet as he ran out. I just stood there watching her fix herself up in the mirror, the same mirror I'd hung up for her last Christmas because she said it had better lighting. She was taking her sweet time too, like she hadn't just nuked our entire marriage. Just casually smoothing down her hair, avoiding my eyes in the reflection, acting like she hadn't just destroyed everything we'd built together. You want to know what this woman, who I caught literally in the act of cheating, had the balls to say to me? She looks at me with this annoyed expression, like I'm some door-to-door salesman who interrupted her day, and goes, "Why are you even back?" Not "I'm sorry" or "I can explain" or any of that basic human decency stuff. Nope. She was actually irritated that I had the audacity to come home early and catch her cheating. In our bed. In our house that we bought together. That I paid the majority of the mortgage on. I've never wanted to hit someone so badly in my life. My hand was actually twitching, remembering how good it felt to slap her affair partner. But I just stood there, paralyzed, while she had the nerve to mutter under her breath, "You weren't supposed to be back." Like this was somehow my fault. Like I was the one who did something wrong by coming home early. Like I should have called ahead to schedule a convenient time to catch her cheating. The absolute audacity of this woman, 6 years of marriage, and this is what it meant to her. A minor inconvenience in her afternoon of fun. You know what's really messed up? I could see our wedding photo right there on the nightstand while all this was happening. The same nightstand where she'd put the breakfast in bed I made her just last weekend. The same room where she'd been telling me she was too tired for sex for the past 3 months. Meanwhile, she clearly had plenty of energy for this random dude. I just stood there like an idiot, my mind racing through every late night at work she'd told me about, every girl's night out, every time she said she was visiting her mom. How long had this been going on? How many other men had been in my bed? I was about to find out, because Carolyn wasn't done talking yet. Not by a long shot. And then this woman, this absolute piece of work, completely lost it. She started screaming at me like I was the one who had just blown up our marriage. You weren't supposed to be back. She shrieked, her face getting all red and blotchy like it did during our fights. This is your fault. If you had just told me you were coming home, you would never have seen this. The mental gymnastics this woman was pulling would have won her an Olympic gold medal. She actually had the nerve to blame me for catching her cheating. But wait, it gets better. I asked you for an open relationship and you said no. She screamed, like that somehow made what she did okay. Yeah, she had asked me once, during a drunk conversation 6 months ago, and I had said no because I believed in monogamy. Apparently, in her twisted mind, that meant she should just go ahead and do it anyway. I have needs. She kept yelling, like I was some kind of monster for expecting basic loyalty from my wife. I tried to do things without hurting you. The absolute insanity of that statement, she tried to cheat on me nicely. How considerate of her. Something in me snapped. 6 years of love, trust, and dedication reduced to I have needs. Every kiss, every I love you, every moment we shared, all fake. I crossed that room in 3 steps, my hands shaking with rage. I grabbed her by the collar of that shirt, the same shirt I'd bought her for her birthday last month, and raised my fist. I wanted to hurt her like she hurt me. I wanted her to feel something, anything, that matched the pain tearing through my chest. But then I saw the fear in her eyes. Real, genuine fear. And even though she'd just destroyed everything I believed in, even though she'd just shown me that our entire marriage was a lie, I couldn't do it. I'm not that guy. I refuse to be that guy. My mom used to look at my dad with that same fear, and I swore I'd never put that look on anyone's face. So I let go of her shirt and stepped back, my fist still clenched but lowered. The dark part of me still wishes I had given in to that rage, just to make her feel a fraction of my pain. But I'm glad I didn't. Not because she didn't deserve it, but because I deserved better than becoming what I always feared. There I was, standing in my own bedroom, surrounded by crushed purple orchids, staring at this stranger wearing my wife's face. 6 years of marriage, and this was how it ended, with her blaming me for catching her cheat. The woman who used to kiss me goodbye every morning was now standing there telling me it was my fault for not calling ahead to schedule my discovery of her affair. The second I let go of her shirt, this woman switched personalities faster than a TV channel. Suddenly she wasn't scared anymore, no, now she was the victim in all this. You were going to hit me? Really? She screamed at my back as I walked away. This is exactly why I don't love you anymore. You're not even a real man. She kept going, her voice following me down the hallway, spewing every insult she could think of. 6 years of marriage and she was trying to provoke me into becoming the bad guy in this story. Real convenient how she went from trembling in fear to screaming insults at the guy she just claimed was about to hit her. It wasn't until I talked to my buddy later that night that it clicked, she wanted me to hit her. Can you believe that? She wanted me to snap and give her something she could use against me. Turn herself from the cheating wife into the abused spouse. Probably had it all planned out. She'd run to the cops with a bruised face, cry about her abusive husband, and walk away with half my stuff and monthly alimony checks. The same woman who used to bring me soup when I was sick was now trying to bait me into domestic violence. The manipulation was almost impressive, in a sick sort of way. I had to get out of that house. The whole place reeked of betrayal, and I mean that literally. Their perfumes and colognes were mixed together in our bedroom, on our sheets, in our air. The same bed where I'd held her through anxiety attacks was now tainted with another man's scent. I grabbed my wallet and keys and just drove, ended up at my friend Mark's place. Thank God for Mark, he took one look at my face and broke out the whiskey. Mark's been divorced before, so he knew exactly what I was in for. He laid it out straight, I needed to lawyer up ASAP. But here's the kicker, I was making 6 figures while Carolyn was working part-time at some boutique, basically playing at having a career. In my state, that meant I was looking at paying this cheating woman alimony. The same woman who just had another man in our bed might get to drain my bank account every month. The justice system's funny like that, you can be the one who gets cheated on and the one who has to pay for it. But Mark, smart bastard that he is, pointed out that infidelity could change the alimony calculations. Document everything, he told me. Every text, every email, every receipt, anything that proves she was stepping out on you. Finally, some good news in this shit show. Maybe I wouldn't have to bankroll her affair partner's dates after all. Still, my head was spinning. Just this morning I'd been a happily married man planning a surprise for my wife. Now I was sitting in my friend's living room, Googling divorce lawyers and trying not to throw up every time I remembered what I'd walked in on. There was absolutely no way I was going to try and fix things with her. I might be dumb enough to buy expensive flowers for a cheating wife, but I'm not stupid enough to forgive one. While I was sitting at Mark's place trying to process everything, my phone started blowing up. Carolyn had apparently decided that since she couldn't manipulate me in person, she'd try to break me down through text messages instead. And holy shit, you guys wouldn't believe the stuff this woman sent me. This was a woman who, just last week, had sent me cute little heart emojis and I love you texts. Now she was sending me detailed comparisons of my manhood versus her affair partners. She actually took the time to write out, in explicit detail, how much better he was in bed than me. How he could satisfy her in ways I never could. How she'd been faking it with me for years. Sent me a whole damn novel about all my sexual inadequacies, complete with size measurements and performance reviews like she was writing a Yelp review for a bad restaurant. She even had the nerve to tell me that her guy had ruined her for other men, as if I was going to want her back after catching her cheating in our own bed. But the best part? She was absolutely livid that I'd ruined her good thing. Can you believe that? She was mad at me for interrupting her affair. Like I should have given them privacy or something. Called me selfish for coming home early without warning her. Said I'd destroyed her chance at real happiness. The mental gymnastics this woman was pulling would have impressed Olympic judges. Thank God Mark was there because he immediately told me to screenshot everything. Document, 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 he kept saying. And man, was he right. Not even a minute after her epic rant about her amazing affair partner and my supposed shortcomings, I watched those little message bubbles start disappearing one by one. Guess she finally realized that confessing to adultery and writing might not be the smartest move when your husband makes 3 times what you do and divorce is on the horizon. After she deleted all the evidence of her affair, she switched to just regular old insults. Called me every name in the book, but carefully avoided any mention of her afternoon activities. It was actually kind of impressive how quickly she went from bragging about her affair to pretending it never happened. Watching those messages disappear in real time was like watching someone try to clean up evidence at a crime scene. Too bad she didn't know I had screenshots of everything. She might have deleted the messages, but she couldn't delete the truth. Or the pictures of them that were now safely stored in my phone's camera roll, ready to show a divorce judge exactly why I shouldn't have to pay this woman a dime in alimony. Mark turned out to be a goldmine of divorce advice that night. Between shots of whiskey, he walked me through everything I needed to do, from securing my bank accounts to collecting evidence. I barely slept that night. Just kept replaying everything in my head while scrolling through divorce lawyer reviews on my phone. The next 2 weeks were a blur of consultations with different attorneys. Some wanted retainers that cost more than my car, others seemed like they'd barely passed the bar exam. I finally found this guy, Lucas, who seemed to actually give a shit about my case and didn't require me to sell a kidney to afford him. When I showed Lucas the screenshots of Carolyn's text meltdown, along with pictures of the state I found our bedroom in, he actually smiled. Said we had a solid case to minimize or even eliminate alimony. But he was also realistic, warned me that judges in our state tend to favor the lower earning spouse regardless of why the marriage ended. Still, he promised to fight tooth and nail for me. Honestly, just having someone in my corner who knew what they were doing felt like the first good thing to happen since this nightmare started. Then came the fun part, serving Carolyn with divorce papers. You want to know what this woman did? She dodged the server for 3 weeks. Changed her schedule, pretended not to be home, even had her mom tell the server she'd moved to Florida. The server finally caught her coming out of a yoga class, probably the only honest exercise she'd gotten in months. Even then, she took the full 30 days allowed by law to respond. Pure spite move. She knew exactly what she was doing, dragging everything out as long as possible because she knew I was paying Lucas by the hour. And oh boy, once the proceedings actually started, Carolyn turned into the queen of petty bullshit. She forgot to bring required documents to meetings. Showed up late to every single appointment.